The atmosphere during the flight was much more harmonious than Sylvie had initially expected, just as Ashes had said. Wendy showed care and concern for everyone, treating them all equally without any distinction because they were newcomers. Lightning seemed to get along well with Maisie, and she had a lively personality. Occasionally, she would fly into the basket with the chubby pigeon and engage in conversations with everyone, completely disregarding the fact that she was once a stranger. With Maisie acting as a bridge between the two groups, the other four gradually relaxed and began inquiring about the situation in the border town from Lightning. Eventually, the young girl hovered near the basket and started sharing stories about the town's battles against demonic beasts and invaders, as well as the incredible feats of the prince, such as his inventions and ideas. Her tales left everyone in awe and captivated their attention. Before long, a hot air balloon arrived above the castle. It descended directly into the castle backyard, and as soon as they stepped out of the basket, a series of booming sounds suddenly echoed through the air, startling the unsuspecting witches, leaving them momentarily frozen in place. Wendy explained that it was a cannon salute, a welcoming gesture from His Highness. The witches from the border town had come out to greet them. They walked through the green-shaded corridor and entered the grand hall of the castle. There, Sylvie finally saw Tilly's brother, who was seated at grand table. He bore a slight resemblance to the princess. Roland introduced himself briefly, assuring the witches that there's no need to feel constrained and that they could treat the town as their own slumbering isle. Unable to contain her curiosity, Sylvie activated her magical eye and was taken aback. The expected darkness did not materialize. The man before her wasn't wearing the god punishment stone, and there were no traces of magical activity around him. He appeared just as he did in the normal field of vision. It wasn't an illusion, nor was he being controlled. This could only mean that the man before her was indeed Roland himself. Since the arrival of the 5 witches from Slumbering Isle, Roland had been in a constant state of excitement. After the evening banquet concluded, he found himself lying in bed, unable to fall asleep. Frustrated, he got up and poured himself half a glass of baijiu. Nightingale sat beside him, teasingly remarking if he couldn't sleep because he had seen new witches. Roland smiled and inquired about how things were going with the new sisters. She pursed her lips and expressed skepticism towards these new witches. One of them, named Sylvie, was at least lying 50% of the time. While it wasn't to the extent of malicious intent, there were definitely hidden agendas. Roland casually remarked, "Perhaps she wants to confirm if I am truly Roland Wimbledon." Nightingale was slightly shocked and didn't quite understand. Roland explained that he knew Tilly believed he might have been replaced or controlled because, in her eyes, Roland was nothing more than a lazy and inept prince who would never protect witches. Any derogatory comment to describe the 4th prince would be an understatement. In order to avoid punishment, he often shifted all responsibility onto Tilly Wimbledon and even fabricated evidence. Curiously, Nightingale asked, "So, are you really Roland Wimbledon?" Roland looked into Nightingale's eyes and replied, "I am. And also I'm not." Nightingale was taken aback. She knew that Roland wasn't lying. Nightingale didn't mind. Regardless, as long as Roland was the Roland she knew, it didn't matter to her. After breakfast, Wendy led the 5 witches from Slumbering Isle to the office. The witches bowed their heads in greeting. Roland, not particularly concerned about formalities, wanted everyone to relax. He hoped the new witches could familiarize themselves with the town and the environment during the first week. They were free to explore Border Town. Nobody would discriminate against them or take them away. During this time, Roland wanted them to practice their abilities and attend educational classes after dinner alongside other witches from the border town. They would receive a monthly salary 1 gold royal, and if they had any questions, they could consult with Scroll and Wendy. The description in Tilly's letter was not very detailed, so Roland wanted to test their abilities first. Before that, Sylvie had something to give to Roland. She opened the package in her hand and placed several yellowed parchment papers and a letter on the table. Roland, with a puzzled expression, opened the envelope. The letter was not long, and he quickly reached the end, but the contents described inside stirred up a storm in his heart. It was an ancient document that Tilly and the others had found in a ruin. Roland and Scroll immediately recognized that the writing on the parchment was identical to the ancient books Hakara had previously obtained from the ruins in the eastern forest. If it was the church that had constructed all of this, why did they abandon it all? Moreover, not only were these grand structures left behind, but even the records from 450 years ago were completely wiped out. What were they trying to hide? The scorching summer sun couldn't bring any warmth to Roland. He could only feel a chilling sensation rising from the depths of his feet, eerie and frigid. What about the ruin lightning found in the hidden forest somehow connected to these ruins? And what about the demonic beasts, devils, and the city of Takara? What kind of catastrophe had occurred 450 years ago? Roland felt a strong sense of unease welling up within him. He decided to inform Tilly about the devils and the holy city of Takara in his response letter and included a picture of a devil as well. After equipping the entire army with the new generation of firearms, Roland will then make preparations to venture into the forest alongside the witches to confront the potential threat of the demons. He understood deeply that peace was not permanent, and it was essential to rapidly strengthen his own power. When the inevitable war arrived, he wanted to have the strength to fight back. The testing location was chosen to be the grassy land outside the town walls. The first to undergo testing was Lien, a petite girl with short, black curls. Her ability allowed her to effortlessly manipulate the terrain within a 5-meter range. During the test, Lien caused the earth beside her to rise vertically, forming a towering pillar that reached a height of 7 to 8 meters. The second participant was Honey, a girl nicknamed Honey due to her sweet personality. She was even shorter than Lien and had just turned 18 the previous winter. Honey possessed the primary ability of beast language, which allowed her to communicate with and influence animals within her range. Various animals under the influence of her magic would carry out her commands. In addition, Honey had an interesting secondary ability, animal messengers. She could use messenger animals to deliver her commands to target animals, recruiting more powerful creatures to her cause. However, this ability was currently unstable. The third participant was Evelyn, a woman in her mid-20s. According to Tilly, her ability could transform low-quality beer into other tasty alcoholic beverages with completely different styles and flavors. Roland's initial purpose for her ability is quite apparent: alcohol purification. However, it wouldn't be gentlemanly to give someone alcohol early in the morning. So on to the next one. The fourth witch is Sylvie. Whenever Roland faces her, he can't help but feel a sense of unease. He simply senses that he has an inexplicable vulnerability in her presence. What's worse is that he knows it's not just a figment of his imagination, it's actually her ability. Sylvie possesses a vision that disregards obstacles. As long as she wishes it, his clothes might as well not exist. Roland can't help but sigh inwardly, wondering why he doesn't possess such an ability. Sylvie's long, straight hair falls to her shoulders in a vibrant shade of green. Her ability is quite easy to understand. She can see everything within her surrounding area, including what is behind her. Her vision can penetrate through obstacles. Moreover, she can also see magical energy. The last witch to make her appearance is Candle. Like Anna, she also celebrated her coming-of-age day during the previous month of demons. She now has the ability to maintain the original properties of objects she touches for a certain period of time. For example, if she uses her power on an ice block, it won't melt even when exposed to sunlight and will continue to emit a chilling aura. However, after several rounds of testing, Roland realizes that her ability is not as perfect as he had imagined. Candle needs direct contact with the target object, which makes it difficult for her to solidify objects with high temperatures. His plan to obtain a drop of steel that would forever remain in a white-hot state, providing a continuous heat source for the blast furnace, has fallen through. Aside from Anna, no one dares to touch something that reaches thousands of degrees with their bare hands. However, even so, this seemingly introverted girl remained Roland's greatest acquisition. In the realm of industrial production, the solidification of material states can truly be deemed priceless. Subjected to factors such as heating, cooling, friction, and external forces, metals experience structures deform. If a crucial component of a machine can maintain a constant state, it signifies that it can consistently operate at maximum efficiency and precision. In other words, the application of intense heat can effectively enhance the mechanical strength of inferior metals. Emerging from the mist, Nightingale inquired, "Do you have a favorite among these 5 witches?" Roland casually replied, "They are all excellent." "What? You like all of them?" Roland playfully tapped Nightingale's head and she stuck out her tongue in response. Then, together, Roland and Nightingale returned to the castle. In the reception hall on the ground floor, the long rectangular table was already filled with various dishes. As the other witches took their seats, everyone began indulging in the feast. It was the first time for the newly arrived witches to experience such a lavish dinner and enjoy such comfortable showers. Evelyn felt a bit down, fearing she might not have a role to play and be left out. Scroll reassured her, mentioning how His Highness had never treated any witch differently in the border town. Hummingbird joined the conversation. Many of them had nothing else to do besides their work, but His Highness had provided them with ample leisure playtime and a lot of freedom. As the dinner approached its end, the prince suddenly clapped his hands, drawing everyone's attention. The first item to be served was baijiu, which had a richer flavor than beer or fruit wine and was more intoxicating. Therefore, underage witches were not allowed to partake. 3 glasses were placed in front of Evelyn, crystal clear and transparent. Each contained a different drink. One glass was colorless, resembling pure water, the second had a milky white hue, and the last one shimmered with a bright orange color. Evelyn's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. She picked up the glass containing the orange-colored drink and took a sip. Just as His Highness had described, the taste of baijiu was much stronger than beer, even slightly throat-stinging. Her taste buds detected a hint of bitterness, but the fragrant aroma of apples diluted its impact. It was her first time tasting such an exquisite drink. The baijiu mixed with milk was milder, almost devoid of bitterness. She could sense that besides milk, there was probably a touch of honey or sugar added to it. The sweetness and the aroma of the alcohol blended together, creating an entirely new flavor. Finally, when it was time for the last glass, she took a small sip. A scorching sensation immediately rolled over her tongue and down her throat, just as she had expected. With no other flavors to interfere, only the pure taste of the baijiu remained. It started with a fiery heat and then transitioned into a sweetness hidden beneath the bitterness. Roland smiled, knowing that this glass was not the most intense baijiu. There was still room to enhance its richness. He would let Evelyn taste it later, and she was eagerly anticipating it. Once the wineglasses and plates were cleared, the prince ordered the servants to bring a pile of boxes and place them on the long table. These were small gifts for the adult witches. He hoped that the witches would open the boxes when they returned to their rooms to rest for the night. After dinner, Nightingale carried the box back to her bedroom. Before she had a chance to open it, Lightning, Maisie, Lily, and Rem bounded in, their eyes gleaming as they stared at the box in her hands. These young witches felt that His Highness was biased, not allowing them to drink wine and denying them gifts. When they opened the box, they were greeted by a strange garment that caught everyone's attention. It felt incredibly soft to the touch, made of high-quality silk, but it didn't look like a piece of clothing at all because it was too small. Maisie thought it was a windproof eyewear, while Nightingale unfolded the piece of paper that came with it. It contained instructions and descriptions of the gift. Wendy and Nightingale stood still, momentarily stunned. After reading the letter, the faces of the adult witches turned red. The young witches quickly caught on to the hint, and Wendy, in an unusual display of embarrassment, wore a flushed expression. Only Lightning remained unfazed, her eyes filled with curiosity and envy. She asked Wendy to try it on, sparking Wendy's deep embarrassment. She promptly ushered the 4 of them out before heaving a sigh of relief. Nightingale also felt a tinge of embarrassment. While it was common to receive clothing items from the castle for everyday use, no one had ever felt awkward about it. However, this gift was clearly intended to fit individuals of different sizes. In other words, Roland had carefully observed each person's measurements.
Yeah, boy.
The thought made her blush furiously. Nightingale seemed to have an idea. She dissipated into the mist, passed through the walls, and made her way to Anna's room. The door was quickly opened, revealing Anna in her robe. Once Nightingale entered the room and closed the door behind her, she asked about the gift from His Highness. Surprisingly, Anna was delighted and said she had already put it on and found it very comfortable. She asked Nightingale if she wanted to take a look. Nightingale hurriedly waved her hand, asking and stuttering if it wasn't strange for His Highness to give such a gift. Anna, puzzled, explained that His Highness intended to promote it as a product. The item was soft, lightweight, and comfortable. Nightingale couldn't help but marvel inwardly. She hadn't paid attention to these small details but had instead focused on His Highness's goals. Perhaps that was what set her apart, her purity and directness. With these thoughts in mind, Nightingale returned to her room, studied the gift for a while, and then put it on herself. Wendy still hesitated to put it on, but Nightingale teased her that His Highness probably made these designed specifically for her. She pulled Wendy into the mist to try it on.
Okay.
Sylvie felt that she had witnessed more extraordinary events today than in the past few years. From the pipes that released water with just a flick of a switch, to the soap that exuded a faint fragrance, and the wine that burned like fire when consumed. Everything seemed incredible. Of course, the most unbelievable thing was the garment given after dinner. Such clothing was usually exchanged between lovers, yet according to His Highness, he not only wanted to give these clothing to the witches but also planned to promote it and popularize it in the Western territories. Sylvie couldn't help but shudder. What noble would choose to personally engage in such a business? Or was it that he truly had an unusual interest towards boing-boings and cakes? Sylvie couldn't help but recall Ash's warning, and she involuntarily stepped back a step. Ash was right. His Highness was a dangerous person, and if possible, it would be better for her to keep her distance from him. A week later, Roland spread out the blueprint in his hand. He officially launched the construction project for the steel bridge. He explained to Lien how to raise 2 pieces of land in the middle of the river to serve as the foundation for the bridge piers. Wendy was also on the boat, but over the past week, whenever she saw the prince, she would slightly avert her gaze, appearing somewhat uncomfortable. She stretched her arms and realized that her shoulders no longer hurt, and her arms were no longer sore. She wanted to find an opportunity to thank His Highness. Next, they would dig out some grooves and fill them with cement, repeating the process until a cement wall was formed that penetrated the bottom of the riverbed. Carl thought this idea was incredibly clever. This way, even if the river water washed away the outer layer of soil, it would be blocked by the solid cement wall. Before long, a mass of grayish-green mud emerged to the surface of the water, appearing soft and emitting an awful smell that caused everyone to cover their noses. However, in Roland's eyes, this was excellent fertilizer. Over the centuries, the remains of fish and other aquatic creatures, water plants, and human waste had gradually accumulated in the soil. He hoped to utilize it someday. Sonny looked at the wheat in his hand, which had been nourished with organic fertilizer, and saw that its quantity had doubled, and the grains had grown larger. He had initially become a knight to escape his peasant identity, but within a few months, he had turned from a knight to a prisoner and then inexplicably ended up working in the town hall. Now, he was starting to enjoy this job more and more. The first batch of wheat planted in the border town has finally reached the day of harvest. The serfs, under the scorching sun, use sickles to cut the wheat stalks, bundling them up and transporting them to the other side of the river. In the afternoon, Barav excitedly rushed into the office. According to the preliminary statistics from the municipal hall, the yield per acre of each assigned field is at least 4 times higher than before, with the highest currently reaching 6 times. Barav's expression appears even more ecstatic than Roland's. With just an additional 2,000 farmers, the town will be able to meet the food consumption needs of 50 to 60,000 people. It's simply unbelievable. In this era, the main reason for the inability to increase urban population is the low agricultural productivity. Even a large city like the capital, with a population of over 20,000, requires dozens of surrounding villages to provide food for its residents. Roland hopes to enter mechanized farming early, where the output of a single person will be enough to feed tens of thousands of people in the future. The significant achievement of a bountiful harvest in the border town today, without the promotion and application of agricultural technology and machinery, was only able to achieve mainly attributed to Leaf's amazing work. In the evening, Roland gave a speech from a high platform, and it felt like time had returned to that dusk 4 months ago. The roaring bonfire, the densely packed crowd, and the last remnants of sunlight reflected on their faces were all familiar sights. However, what was different this time was the expressions on their faces. Instead of the initial fear and unease, now they were filled with the joy of a bountiful harvest and undeniable anticipation. Roland didn't introduce himself or waste time with pleasantries. He went straight to the point. He declared that everyone present could become free citizens. Once they became free citizens, they had the freedom to choose whether to continue farming or seek other occupations. The list of promotions would be announced in a couple of days. This simple statement ignited the atmosphere at the gathering. People couldn't contain their excitement and started shouting and cheering. Furthermore, starting from next year, as long as the harvest meets the promotion standards, even if the yield doesn't rank at the top, individuals can still become free citizens. In other words, as long as they work diligently, they can definitely shed their status as serfs. Roland paused for a moment and looked around. I hope that one day in the future, there will be no more serfs in Border Town. Everyone will become true citizen of the Border Town. The moment Roland's words faded away, the cheers of the people echoed through the sky above the Redwater River, continuing without end. Timothy walked into the arched dome at the top of tower in Bluewater Harbor. Step by step, he approached the desk and sat down in the oversized chair. Leaning forward, he pressed his face against the tabletop and took a gentle sniff, as a faint, pleasant fragrance entered his nostrils. At that moment, he couldn't help but burst into laughter. He had finally won. Garcia had given up Bluewater Harbor, giving up the southern frontier, which also meant giving up the throne of Grey Castle. The night guarding outside pushed the door open and entered. Timothy would depart for the capital tomorrow morning. Aside from the personal guard and the knights of Grey Castle, he left the rest of the knights and mercenaries under the command of this knight commander. Timothy ordered him to guard the southern frontier well, ensuring that the Sand tribes would not set foot on Grey Castle's territory again. The young knight hesitated, and Timothy knew what he was thinking. He reassured him that as soon as the matter in Bluewater Harbor was resolved, he would immediately recall him to the capital. The young knight mustered the courage to ask Timothy if there was any news about his brother. The knight's words caused Timothy to pause for a moment. Indeed, it had been 2 months since his brother was sent to plunder the western frontier, and there had been no news. Timothy, with his back turned to the young knight, stated that his brother must have returned to the capital ahead of them. He then ordered the young knight to burn everything that belonged to Garcia, including this building. He wanted everyone in the southern frontier to know that Garcia's lair no longer existed. He also wanted those who had used the pills but didn't die on the battlefield to be killed. Staying behind in the border town, safely withstood the month of the demons, defeating Duke Ryan, and capturing the Canggu stronghold, even causing the complete loss of contact with the 1,500 militiamen of Raymond. How did he manage to do all this? Timothy never delved deep into understanding his younger brother. Whether it was Garcia or Jylan, they never enjoyed playing with him when they were young. Undoubtedly, something must have happened to him after he arrived in Border Town, leading to the changes he had undergone. Regardless of what he encountered, the population and location of Border Town is predetermined that he had nowhere else to run. With no harbor or fleet and the impassable wilderness behind him, Roland could only hold that corner, waiting for his army to march and trampling onto his territory.
Are you sure about that?